Hi, this is Gayle with BERNINA of Naperville, and we are knee-deep in the All-Illinois Shop Hop. And this year, they're doing a really fun thing where each participating store actually has their own block that has been curated by the store itself. And then there are these very kind of generic instructions to make all of the different elements that make up a block. And of course, there's even special fabric for the Shop Hop, and this year it's all about Illinois. And one of the things, if you're watching from far and wide, I just want you to keep in mind is that the fabric will be available later, but for right now, it's earmarked for our all Illinois Shop Hop participants. So just keep that in mind. But also I want you to keep in mind that you can make this out of whatever fabric you want to, because this block is a little unique and a little fun. So let's get into it. So here is our all Illinois Shop Hop block card for BERNINA of Naperville. We picked this, and then they kind of have these generic instructions that you do depending on what shop you're visiting, and there were different blocks that you can choose from and things like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut first, and the cutting is super simple. It's right here. And then what we're doing from this is we only need D and E shapes. So that's a quarter square triangle and half square triangles. And we've got these 6 fabrics here. And from each fabric, you need to cut 2 4¼ inch squares, like you see here, and 1 3/8 square, like you see here. And once you have these cut from your 6 different fabrics, we're going to need to cut the larger ones, which are 4¼ into 4 quarter square triangles. And this one becomes a half square triangle. Now, why quarter square triangles versus half square triangles? And that's because if we pay attention to the grain line, the grain lines run horizontal and they run vertical like this. When we make these triangles for our block, this right here is a triangle, and we want this to be on grain. So that means we need to cut a quarter triangle because our grain line then is straight along the edge of our quarter square triangle. If we tried to cut it from a half square, then that straight edge would be on the bias, which is the stretchiest part of the fabric. And we want to try to avoid that when we're sewing our rows together. So let's cut our 4¼ quarter inch triangles. So we're going to place these on top of each other perfectly like this. Then we're going to take one of our rulers here, and we're going to line it up corner to corner and make our first cut. Then we're not going to move anything other than our ruler and line this up corner to corner and make our second cut. Now, because we cut 2 4¼ inch squares, this is actually going to yield us 8 triangles, but we only need 5 from each fabric. Then with this one, I do recommend when you cut your 2 3/8 inch square, which is what size you need for this one. And remember, it's 1, 2 3/8 per the fabrics here. You want to make sure that you get a ruler that has 1/8 inch markings. Now, this ruler that I have here only has 1/4 inch markings. So that's why it would be a nice thing to have a ruler that has the 1/8 inch markings like this, or even my Tula Pink ruler, like this one, has 1/8 inch markings. Then once you have your 2 3/8 square cut, you're just going to go corner to corner to make that half square triangle. And then we'll just put these aside, and I'm going to continue cutting the rest of my fabrics. So now we're going to just lay out our blocks so we know what we're doing. So the small ones are going to be reserved for the corners. So if you look, here's my lighter color here. This is going to be the bottom 2 corners. So if you wanted, you could go ahead and just lay those out like this. Then, putting my smaller corners aside for just a moment, I'm going to take my cardinal fabric and we're going to line these up alternatively with our larger ivory pieces and then saving a corner like this. So there's one row. Then we can put our other row together. Once again, we're going to add our half square triangle corners like this. And then we're going to now take our blue and put it together, and then see how we're just alternating our pieces. And so these are half square triangles, and their pieces are on grain like this. So this is the grain line here and here. And then our quarter square triangles, the grain line is here like this. So I'm just going to lay out my entire block before I get ready to stitch it. And you get this really cute chevron effect. And, you know, personally, I would prefer fabric that didn't look like it came out of Abraham Lincoln's mother's hope chest. But, you know, this is the house that we live in. And by the way, here's a little fun fact about Abraham Lincoln's mother. So Abraham Lincoln's mom was named Nancy Hanks, and Nancy Hanks was actually born beyond Saddle Mountain in the West Virginia Appalachia area. And I grew up hearing the story my whole life. In fact, so much so that I put a little information in it in my book, Stopping Inertia. So if any of you are really bored and you need a good novel to fall asleep to at night, you should check out my Stopping Inertia book. But I digress. I'm going to continue building my block now. All right, you're welcome. Okay. And apparently, you know, Abraham Lincoln, he grew up in a log cabin, which, you know, back in those days, log cabin was like, oh, he lives in a log cabin. Nowadays, if you live in a log cabin, you don't call it a cabin. It's a log home, and they're particularly fancy. But, you know, what I have to say about this is I find that Illinois has, I used the wrong pieces there. See, that will teach me to talk and do this at the same time. But what I find is that Illinois has way more to offer, you know, than just Abraham Lincoln and, you know, what some of the more rural areas of Illinois provide. I really enjoy my Chicagoland area where we have Mortimer Arboretum. We have Chicago, the city, with all of the cool architecture and the Frank Lloyd Wright inspired stuff and the skyscrapers and the food. It's not all pizza and Italian beef either. There's lovely restaurants. There's just all kinds of fun things. And so, you know, obviously, if you visit Illinois, you're going to want to visit all of the sites. But Springfield, Illinois is the capital, and that's also where Abraham Lincoln was from. Okay, and there we go. So now we're just going to start sewing this together. I'm going to start sewing my pieces together, and you're going to align your piece together like this. And see how this one has like a little puppy ear on it? You want to make sure that that hangs off, and that's about 1/4 inch. So I'm going to just take my entire cutting mat here over next to my Bernina 735, which is what I'm using to piece this, and I'll keep everything straight and stitch it together. So I'm using the number 57 foot with the little guide on it. I don't really need it, but sometimes I like using it just so I know exactly where I'm placing my fabric, but whichever patchwork foot is your favorite is the one that you can use. And I've got my straight stitch at 2.5 millimeter stitch length. So I'm going to start, and I'm starting from right to left on the bottom row, and I'm going to use my knee lever to lower my presser foot, and now I'm just simply going to stitch. And now I'm going to just lift and cut. Now I could chain piece, but my brain can't work that way. So I am going to finger press my seam like this. And now I'm going to take this piece and line it up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to have two little puppy points here, there and there, like this. And we're going to align that under our foot like so, lining up the raw edge to the guide on our foot. And I'm just going to keep pressing to the side like so. See that? Now we're going to take a green piece and always place them how you plan on stitching them, like this, so you can make sure you get everything straight. And now I'm going to line this up. And remember, that little puppy ear is going to just stick out there so that when you place it under your foot at 1/4 of an inch, that little tail, this little spot right there, is 1/4 of an inch from the raw edge of the fabric. And the same here. This distance from here to here is going to be 1/4 of an inch. Pressing to the side. Aligning it like so. And then the last piece in the row is our half square triangle, which is going to get lined up, matching our corners like this. All right, so I'm going to press this, trim my little threads and everything, and then we're going to do each row in the same fashion. And then we're going to sew the rows together. Here it is, and ready to go into a larger quilt, or don't forget, if you wanted to make this into like a baby size quilt or whatever, you could just do the same process, just going row by row to create this cute little chevron design. Well, did you enjoy making it? I hope that it might have solved any issues you had, maybe struggling with the blocks, and maybe it even helps you make some other blocks that are part of the Illinois Shop Hop that's not necessarily a Bernina of Naperville curated block. So if you like this quick tutorial and you want to see more, don't forget to check out our Bernina of Naperville YouTube channel. It's easy. It's youtube.com/Bernina of Naperville, and there you can like, comment, and subscribe. Happy hopping.